there was a problem. I described Shadow of the Moon and these brand new transfers that NASA had done. And that was absolutely amazing because it took the moon landings from being something that was fading, visually, televisually into the past, because the print copies that they were making that had been made, onto tapes were just terrible. And suddenly you had this kind of Technicolor view of going to the moon again. And NASA, that sort of kickstarted a sort of mini industry in making films about space and Apollo, a lot of which I worked on. And NASA kind of opened their film library, and people could go there. And because of something called the Space Act, NASA were obliged to give you free access to this material. So it just meant that if you had a catalogue, and working with like Chris Riley, who I mentioned earlier, he'd been to the film library and sat there at a Steenbeck and been through miles and miles and miles of this footage, so you could build up quite a good knowledge of what they had, and then you could order up transfers, and obviously you had to pay for that and all the rest of it. But then the other great thing for producers is that the stuff is royalty free, so you don't have to pay, like if you use something for Imperial War Museum, you have to pay royalties on it, so it becomes very expensive. So we got absolutely tons of this stuff. And then suddenly there were budget cuts at NASA, and one of the things they cut was people to staff the film library, and you suddenly couldn't get access to it anymore, which was like a nightmare. And that happened when I was doing Last Man on the Moon, and it was like these shutters came down. And then you had to sort of try and find your film footage whatever way you could. And so this little community of people built up. Where I know somebody's so-and-so's got these shots about the lunar rover. Let's go there. And so you get bits and pieces from all over and kind of assemble it. But it did leave gaping holes in the kind of archive narrative. And it didn't help when some people then started to hoard this stuff and not share it, or share it for a big price, so which seemed to go against the spirit of NASA and the Space Act. So it became tricky for a while, but now they've transferred basically NASA have given the National Archives in Washington access to all the material, so you can get it again. And that was one of the things in Armstrong, that we could then start to go back to this, to the negatives and start getting transfers done again. So it's like the doors opened again, a different set of doors.